almost live from the CX Therapy Studio, CX Therapy Season 4.
Good morning, Max. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you, Julien? How is the evening? How's the City of Light? How's Paris? How are you?
I'm super excited today. We get tons of things to talk about. I don't want to tell you too much, but our guest today is someone I've been interacting with for years, but we never actually had a chance to do something together. So that's a pretty exciting experience.
Nice. All right.
And he does speak so many languages that we're going to get along just fine, which is,
I'm American. I speak one language.
No pun. But before we do that, before we talk about the future, I'd like to wrap up a little bit the past first. Did you order anything from Amazon since we last talked with Justin?
I did, and I'm disappointing. I ordered it, and it came the next day.
Maybe you didn't order it from Australia. That might be the difference.
No, that's true. Nothing to do with Australia. Maybe that's the weak link here.
I think that's what happened. So last month we talked about, Amazon was the excuse here, but really we talked about taking responsibility. We talked about empowerment. We talked about not focusing on pre-written scripts.
Yes.
We had quite a few topics. Did that justify receiving something in the mailbag, maybe?
Well, there's only one way to find out.
Now it's time to open this week's mailbag.
The mailbag is here.
But I feel like we're now very much synchronized in the way we start the jingles and call the mailbag. And there we go. Beautiful. All right, what do you have for us this week?
Let's see what's in here. Oh, real life physical letter.
It does still exist.
And
you know what? I would love for you at some point to come up with the facts. If you can do that.
With the facts? All right. We'll do it. Okay. So here is the question. This is a good point to ask about this. With the Amazon delivery issue, do you feel that this was a crazy outlier that Amazon almost never faces, and that was a lot of the problem? Or do you think this is something that happens enough that they should have been prepared and they just weren't?
Well, you know what? I think it's both, because from my personal experience and the fact that they are still number one in the world, I guess it was an outlier, because if it was happening all the time, they would not be number one. And personally,
it wouldn't be Amazon. Fair enough.
9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, probably, I don't have a problem when I order on their platform. And when I do, it's pretty simple to fix. I've had a couple of bad stories with them, but they were super specific. But once you said that, the second point is also very valid, meaning they should have a way to fix it. It's not because it doesn't happen very often that they should not. You need to take care of 100% of your customers, not the 99% of customers that have the usual complaint and ignores the last 1%. It's your role.
I guess let's play a math game. At what point is it just so bizarre that you just kind of got to shake your head and say, no way, you were saying 99% of the time it's good, 1% you have a problem, and that usually those are solved. If it's 1/10 of 1% that is as lame, I don't think that's acceptable. I think it would be like, 1 in 10,000. That I have a problem like that. Something, it'd have to be so flippin' rare. And even then, just the fact that they were just completely unable to do anything.
If you
sound good.
If you want to use the math cards, you're going to have to use the prediction card as well. Because I mean, from a pure math perspective, yes, that 1% of a 1% or it's probably incredibly small, and you don't mind losing that customer when you have millions, if not billions, of customers. But let's keep in mind that there is rapid evolution in our society right now. And who's to tell that Tim Yu is not the next Amazon or Wish or someone or Shein or whatever other brand could come and take their place at some point. I mean, no one would think about replacing Google, but now we're talking about, what about ChatGPT and all the things? Is Google really a thing? Is it going to be a thing 10 years from now? So, I mean, Amazon, they are in this beautiful position today, but what's telling us that they're going to be in the same position 10 years from now? And taking care of your customers is probably the only way to secure your future, and pissing off a CX expert who's going to this on every channel.
But I guess, I mean, even Amazon doesn't have infinite money. So there are, there's only, at some point, there's a finite line where you just have to say, okay, this stuff's going to happen. I don't have any way to invest in it. And I think that is where it becomes agent empowerment and things like that. And since that's a lot of where the breakdown is, maybe the idea of, well, this was too expensive to invest anything specific in, but somehow, somewhere there needed to be, they just don't have the backstop, I think is really what this chat is getting me to realize.
I think that gives me actually a pretty good transition to our next topic. I wanted to share some stats with you. I like to share stats. The first one here for you from SuperOffice. Only one unhappy customer out of 26. So it's 96% of customers that when they're angry or when they're unhappy, they don't tell you. Why am I saying that? Because it's possible that you have a lot of unhappy customers and you're just not aware of this. And usually the reason why, I like to call them the silent customers, the reason they don't give you feedback is not because they're happy. It's probably because just the idea of calling you or sending an email or just finding your contact information is just too painful. And they are not going through the trouble. They may be, we've been talking about quiet quitting a couple of years ago. That was a big trend for employees. I think there's exactly the same thing for customers. There's quiet quitting. You piss me off, but I'm not even going to dignify your attitude by telling you that you pissed me off. I'm just going to go to the competitor. And you'll never have that opportunity to fix the problem. Do you believe in that stat?
I believe that this is very real. That number is high, but I would say it's surprising, not shocking in any way, shape, or form. And what it really is.
Just to contextualize the number, it's keep it to themselves, meaning they don't share it with the company. Doesn't mean they don't share it with their friends.
Right. And that could be out on social media or whatever. Boy, is that chilling. I mean, what motivation to get it right. And there's another element about this is in the way we do our dates in the United States, 1/26 is my birthday. So I feel very good about that stat for that as well.
Well, since it's your birthday, what about we share your numbers? Because the next one is coming straight from Forrester.
Okay.
And these are two numbers. And what I'm trying to show you here is the gap between the two numbers. It's coming from your studies. So 71% of companies have either a chatbot or they are working on the chatbot, but at least it's part of the plan, implemented or about to be implemented. It's part of their roadmap. Only 16% of customers claim that they use a chatbot often as being, I think that was more than once in the past 30 days or 3 months, whatever it was. But right? Whether you believe in the 71% or 16%, whether they are accurate or vague, what really strikes me here is the gap, 55 points, meaning that you got majority of companies building chatbots and a minority of people actually using them or feeling like they are using them. What do you get from that?
A couple of things. One is design. I mean, the bottom line is chatbots are bad. more often than not, they're hard to use. They don't get the answer. If I ever get to a situation where I don't get the answer, I'm just never going to use the damn thing again. There's just no way. It's fatal.
I think you have some very well-designed chatbots there, but it's like everything. I mean, you remember mostly your bad experiences. I think you remember the bad chatbots. I think you have conversation with great chatbots and you forget them instantly because they've just done what they were designed to do. And you don't remember things that work the way they were supposed to work. You remember exceptional things, or you remember poorly designed things. And I think it's probably I'm pretty sure there's more than 16% of people that use chatbot, but maybe they just don't remember it. Which leads me to the last stat I wanted to share with you today. 60% of consumers have purchased something from one brand over another based on the service they expect to receive.
Interesting word there.
All right?
Yeah.
Customer expectation, incredibly important. We talk about this week over week, month over month. How do you feel about that stat?
I'm fascinated by expect. It says something that I do think is real, which is I'm not calling customer support to make a friend. I'm not calling, I have a problem, I need to get it done, or I want to buy something, just let me buy it. And it's not like, there's so much talk about delighted. The bar isn't up here to be like the perfect experience. And I just made I'm going to call this rep and we're going to go out to lunch tomorrow. The goal is I want to do this thing. It was so easy to buy. I got the product and I liked it. That's what I remember. So I think it's very valid.
You know what? I love the fact that you get stuck on the word expect, because that's really something that strikes a chord with me. It's customers' expectations. I mean, there are two things. First, many brands don't set the expectations. And if you don't set the expectations, customers set their own expectations, and you're likely to fail because you don't know what they are. They're going to be different from one customer to the other. The other thing is you kind of set expectations whether you want it or not by having your brand promise. And your brand promise, you may have designed it, but chances are whatever you designed, it's going to be a perception that customers, build over what they see, what they hear, how they interact with your product, with your ads, with your people, and all of that. And the brand promise kind of matters. Going back to what Justin was saying the other day, there was a brand promise of, can't remember what it was, best customer-centric company in the world, or whatever it was. That's the perception. And the gap with the reality is huge. That's why he got pissed, because I got my expectations, you go below my expectations, there's a failure. But if you set the expectations, even if they're not great, at least you set the bar. People are not going to complain too much if you hit what you promised you would hit in the first place.
Yeah, as long as you don't promise to suck or something. There's limits, right? But yeah, Costco is the king of this, right? I don't know, you guys. I don't even know if you have Costco out there. It's the big warehouse store. It is a warehouse. You go in there and there's metal racks and there's stuff up to the ceiling. And if you want to get something up high, you got to find somebody to get it. But they sell stuff in quantity. They sell it. It's great quality. The prices are insanely good. And they have brand loyalty at the same level of, Ferrari and Four Seasons hotels. And it's the opposite sort of experience. It's working men. It's just down in the, brass knuckles, just go get your stuff. It's cheap and it's good and you get a lot of it. And they have more. There's this, Forrester has this concept of I think it's brand ambassador. I may have the term wrong. The very highest, deepest level of loyalty. They have as many of those as the best brands ever.
So setting the expectation and delivering on what your brand promised in the first place.
Right.
What about we invite someone to talk about this with us and dig a little bit deeper into customer expectation and all of these things?
Oh, please. That sounds great. Who you got?
And now, please welcome this week's guest, a true CX expert.
Good afternoon, Michael. I'm actually glad I can say good afternoon for once.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Hi, Julien. Hi, Max.
So, Max, let me introduce you briefly before you start questioning our guest here. Michael and I have been chatting for the past few years, really. I've invited him to a couple of different studies. Sent him my book, was one of the first ones to receive the book as well, because I really value his feedback. He is based in Switzerland, which means he's one of these people who can speak so many languages fluently that you don't even know what his native language would be. And obviously a CX expert, which is why I wanted to invite him for a while. We finally have a chance to have him here. So welcome to the CX Therapy Couch, Michael.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm delighted to meet you, even if it's only virtually, Julien.
Now, I'm afraid you're going to have to get on, Max's questionnaire. That could be tough, but I hear you have large shoulders, so we should be good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna be
Fire
brutal,
away, Max.
promise. So the first thing, one of the things I've observed is particularly the vendors in the customer service space, contact center space, love to blur the line between customer service and customer experience. It's funny, I will get brands calling me and asking questions, and I'll talk to them, and they're all over the map of where they see, some of them see CX and customer service the same thing. Some of them it's very distinct. What's your definition of those terms?
Well, I certainly don't think it's distinct. I think that customer service is part of the customer experience.
Agreed.
Right? I think it's, customer experience starts way before customer service does. Could very well end at the same time, although, the end of customer experience is after the experience is before the experience, right? So, if you're talking about products, the experience that you have with a product, and the customer service that you have, that's going to determine whether you buy another product from that company or not, right? So I think customer service is part of the customer experience, and I know that there are people out there that do try to confuse the two or blur the lines, as you say, but I think for me the lines are very clear.
Yeah, I'm with you. Even within Forrester, there's a tendency to think of customer experience as the department who owns the customer journeys and the surveys, and to me that's too narrow, because
Absolutely.
You mentioned the product, and I always like to say, what about the thread count in the bed in the hotel? That's a big part of the customer experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you on that. I've spent the last year focused very specifically on conversational AI, chatbots, and voice bots, and watching a whole cohort of vendors completely reinvent their products to bring generative AI and LLMs in. And I really firmly believe the amount of stuff we're going to be able to automate is going to go up a lot. And I hope it'll be done in a way that's better. I don't trust. Brands just, the motivation to automate, whether it's good for the customer or not, is a little too strong a lot of the time. But I firmly believe, and I know you do too, humans are always going to be a part of the contact center and customer service. And how do you see the role playing out for people? What do you see the agent evolving to as this gets better?
I think the agent is going to be the firefighter, right? The person who's going to be dealing with more complex issues. I think that the bots are really useful if it comes to dealing with really routine issues, but they have to work well. And in many cases, unfortunately, even that doesn't work. But I think the human being is really going to be necessary still when it comes to dealing with complex issues that bots can't deal with. A couple of times now I've had experiences with bots when I've asked something and they've not been able to reply, so they put you through to the to a technician, which is fine. And in one case, I even had a case with a bot which gave me a choice of 3 answers. I chose one, and then it told me it didn't understand. So it didn't understand it. So yeah. So I think the really important thing is, if you're going to use bots, make sure that they work.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Well, if the bot already accepts that it does not understand your question and naturally transfers you to a human being, that's already a win. Because many times you're just in a closed loop, and
Sure.
and that is much worse than having a bot that does not understand, but then lets you talk to a human being afterwards.
Sure. Or it freezes, in which case, you hang up and start again, but
yeah.
But I think companies really have to think about, what is beneficial for the customer, what's going to help the customer. And I think, it's still very fashionable. I think a lot of companies do it because everybody else is doing it, so we do it. There's not necessarily a concept behind it, a plan how to do it. Sometimes I think there's not that much thought that's gone into it. So I think these are things that, it's new, it's fashionable. I think hopefully in time things will settle down and people start trying to figure out where there's a true benefit to using bots and AI in general, and where it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm one of the things I'm hopeful for is a couple of brands with really good marketing departments who put out a really good bot that does stuff we're just not used to their being able to do, and does a really good job of promoting that out there in the world. And brands kind of go, wait, it can do that? And kind of drive a whole new level of things it can do, just with some good examples out there.
I agree. I think that'll be good.
So
Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about chatbots, and one of the many reasons why brands try to deploy chatbot is to be able to respond 24/7 when your agents are not necessarily working, even outside office hours. And that's true for chatbot, but that's true for voice bots as well, that we tend to put in the same category, which leads me to my question for today for you guys, because I was just amazed with the stat I read. So in your opinion, how long are customers willing to wait? And I'm talking about holding the line, right? Being on the phone. How long do you think customers are willing to wait? That is obviously an average, so it's probably going to be widely different across segments, across regions, across cultures. But what would be your bet if you had to give a number?
Well, I think it's going to depend very much on how important the call is, right? If you're trying to get to an appointment at a doctor's, you might hold for longer than if it's, just about ordering something which you might possibly be able to order elsewhere, right? So I think it's very contextual.
Yeah, I think
I know that Go ahead, Max. No, I know I've held for an hour, for a really important call, but that was exceptional. Generally after 15 minutes, I start getting antsy and will probably just hang up in disgust.
So this is what's fascinating me. I talk to a lot of brands about people call me to talk about hold time. It's like, really, guys? What about callback? Why are we even talking about this? But that's another story. There's the old 80-20 metric that people wanted to answer 80% of their calls within 20 seconds. I've seen some studies where customers aren't thinking twice about hold until 2, 3, 4 minutes out there. So I get a hunch the answer is going to be somewhere under 5 minutes, because people are thinking about, to your point, Michael, the really simplistic thing, not, I'm going to get a really good tech support expert. But I'll bet it's the 3-minute-ish range. That would be my number I'd throw out.
Well, I was betting for something like that. But remember, we're talking about customer expectations here, and this has a numbers I got.
1 minute.
1 minute.
So
That's 60% of customers. So majority of customers that have been asked the question feel that waiting on hold for just 1 minute is already too long. But back to your 80-20 is kind of that. I mean, if you expect 80% of your calls to be answered within 20 seconds, which I seriously doubt That might be a goal, but I seriously doubt most companies achieve that. You kind of create, again, expectations. But what was even more interesting is dissatisfaction sits at 46 seconds in average. After 46 seconds, whether you're going to hold for an hour or not, which I often do and usually regret, you might actually start being pissed off after 46 seconds. How do you feel about that data?
I absolutely agree. I think that's absolutely true. I think, after a while you think, okay, where on earth are they, right? Why is nobody picking up? I hear this lousy music. I don't want to. There are very few companies where I'd actually say I like the hold music, but yeah, I mean, you don't want to spend your life sitting on hold, right? We all have more important things to do, and I think that's what companies forget. Customers have a life.
Yeah, so my counter argument, I would rather wait. I'll use 3 to 5 minutes. I would happily wait 3 to 5 minutes to guarantee or to significantly reduce the chance my call's going to have to be transferred. Because that's how you solve answering it more quickly. Is you just the janitor starts answering the call because you gotta find a warm body just to answer it, and call transfers really much more impact on customer sat than a couple of minutes. Now, over 5 minutes, now you start getting into really I hate you time. But I think that there's I'd rather see a little bit more hold time and first contact resolution really getting there instead of speed.
But Max, I'm going to push back on this. You say I'd happily, really happily. Yeah. Of course, you'd rather that the phone was picked up quicker, right?
Fair enough. I would resignedly. That would be the best.
Exactly. Okay, got it. Okay, agree.
So we get the hold time, we get the I hate you time, we get the happy time. Now I think it's time for story time.
Gather around, folks. It's time for Guest CX Story.
So with us today, we've got Michael, and Michael is not just a CX expert. He happens to be a consumer like most of us. And I believe, Michael, you have a story for us.
Sure, absolutely. So, I live in Switzerland. Switzerland has a mail service, a post office, which is generally considered to be, very reliable and very efficient. And just like, most national post offices, they're cutting down on the number of physical post offices where you can go and mail stuff. But they have another service instead where you can, if you want a letter or a parcel picked up, you register up to 8 a.m. On the morning of the pickup, and the postman will stop and pick up your parcel. If you can stamp it, that's fine, because you can buy stamps online. They'll take it and put it in the system. If not, they'll actually take it to the post office and they'll bring you with the money. You've got to leave money with it too, and they'll bring you back the change and the receipt the next day. So really efficient. So, we sell stuff online sometimes, and we say we'll ship. And it's easy. We, pack the stuff up, and we register online for the mailman to pick it up the next day. Well, we did this a few weeks ago, and 11 o'clock came and went. The mailman generally comes around about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and the parcel was still in the box. And we realized he'd driven right on by. Hadn't stopped, hadn't picked up the parcel. And it's quite a drive to the nearest post office. So I contacted the post office, their complaint section online, spoke by chat to a real agent. And they said, okay, they apologized, said very sorry. And they would get the post office, they'd send a message to the post office to send someone back to pick it up. So I thought, well, that's great. Okay, if somebody actually comes back and picks up the parcel, fantastic. I have to admit, I was quite skeptical. But this person has assured me, no, they'll send someone back to come pick it up. So I said, fine, okay. And so we finished the call because they sent me a survey. Was I happy? Had the person resolved the problem? And foolishly, I already answered yes, the person solved the problem. Right. So I waited until 4 p.m. and I realized no one was coming back to pick it up. So I had to drive to the post office and mail it myself. And then I went online again and spoke to another agent. And I was absolutely furious. I said, look, your person said they were going to come back. Someone was going to come back and pick it up. And they didn't. So I waited until 4 o'clock. And then I had to rush out myself to take it to the post office because that parcel had to go today. Right? That's the commitment I'd made, that the parcel was going today. And I said, what really annoyed me more than anything wasn't the fact that the mailman hadn't picked it up in the morning. I mean, okay, it can happen, right? Nobody is perfect. It can happen. But what annoyed me the most was the fact that the agent that I had spoken to or chatted with after it hadn't been picked up had led me to expect that the issue was solved, when in actual fact it wasn't. Right? And then I had to, panic at 4 p.m., go out and mail the parcel. And that's what really bothered me the most. And of course, after they made it up to me, all right? They sent me a voucher, which is fine, right? But that was the thing that really bothered me the most and got me upset. And of course, you were talking about expectations before in your stats, right? Expectations of the Swiss Post Office is that these things don't happen. It's efficient. They have, a process in place. The mail person has the digital assistant, which says you've got to stop at this address to pick something up. The guy just flown by and that was it. But the worst thing was, my expectations then in the afternoon, they weren't managed. If the person said, look, I'm really sorry, if the parcel needs to go today, you're going to have to go to the post office. We'll make it up to you. And I said, fine, okay, and I bit the bullet. But waiting and thinking someone was coming and they weren't, that was worse.
Do you mind if I jump in first, Max? I have something I need to get off my chest.
Oh, this is Julien's wheelhouse. He has more delivery nightmares than 9 out of 10 people in the world.
No, but that you know what? When you started your story, if I didn't know you in the first place, I could have bet you're coming from Switzerland. Because you started by saying the post office has a reputation of reliability and trust. And you can't be coming from France because this is the exact opposite. We have the expectations that if there is something they can do wrong, they will do wrong. The French reputation for the post office is they invented Murphy's Law. They invented it and they stick by it every day they can. And it's probably completely unfair, by the way, because I'm sure they do 99% of the time things right. But again, you get stuck on the 1%, and that's unfair. But you always remember the plane that's late or the train that's canceled or the parcel that does not arrive. But I love that because you started with the first expectation you got is that Brandt promise. They have the reputation. They are reliable. And I'm disappointed because the Brandt promise did not come through when it came to actually delivering the product. Max, sorry, I cut you out. Go ahead.
No, that was great. You're so right that it's the misset expectation, because it feels like a lie, right? It isn't even a mistake at that point, and it probably ultimately underlying it was a mistake. And I think you didn't highlight, but I'm sure it was also a factor that if you had been told at 1 o'clock, sorry, you're going to have to go, then you had your whole afternoon to kind of figure out when to fit it into your schedule. And now it's, I got to go now. It's 4. And that's a whole nother layer of pain.
Exactly.
That comes with this. Yeah.
So Sorry, I'm taking.
And hey,
notes.
I'm one of the 4%. I'm one of the 4% that's happy to complain. By the way, I've just ordered a new cap which says "Grumpy old man. I'm only happy if I'm complaining." So
Well, then you might be half French at the end of the day, actually. So there is a silver lining. So I was saying, let's talk for a second about expectation, because I think here, if I'm not mistaken, the reason why you're probably so upset about the experience is I feel they set 3 expectations, or they set the expectation 3 times and they failed 3 times. The first level is before you even interact with them, you had that image, that perception that they are reliable, and they're not. At least that time, they were not. The second is when you booked for them, when you booked before 8 a.m. on that day for them to come up on the same day, they made that promise to you that, okay, we got the order, we're coming. And they broke that promise as well. And the third one was probably the worst of all is, now I actually talked to a human being that guarantees it's going to happen, and it did not happen. So actually they failed not once or twice, they failed 3 times on their promise.
That's fair.
And I was saying as a starter, many companies don't set the expectations, but they have set the expectation. And it's even worse to set expectation and fail on them, because no one asked you to set them this way. You decided that we can book until 8 a.m. the same day. That's your decision as a company. So if you make that promise, deliver on it. Or just don't promise. Say it's going to be next day, which probably everyone would be happy with. But just, set the expectation in a way that you can actually deliver on them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was one disappointment after another, if you like. So, and we're not used to it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Come again?
You don't expect it. Again, it comes down to expectations. We just don't expect it.
In the U.S., well, I guess in the U.S. you can arrange the post office to pick something up. So I'm not even sure we have that service here. So we don't have set expectations low, just like the French post office.
I was gonna say the service sounds already fantastic in Switzerland. I'm happy to study the story, but I'm already a little bit jealous. Even when it goes wrong, it feels like it's already better than when it goes right in France. So, but Max, you unveiled something I did not even think about during the story, which is the responsibility. Something else that went terribly wrong here, and that is so common, unfortunately, is actually the responsibility that should have been with the company ended up on your shoulder. Meaning you were supposed to have someone picking up your parcel. They didn't show up. But not only they didn't show up, but they did not inform you. Then a promise was made. They still didn't show up. And it was still your responsibility as a customer for some reason to call them up and ask for status. It should have been their responsibility to proactively tell something went wrong, which is completely acceptable, not pleasant, but acceptable, understandable. When there's proactive communication and the responsibility remains with the company, the discussion is, or at least the emotion is definitely more positive than it's when it's on you. You have to check in. You have to stay around the entire day waiting for something good to happen. From a responsibility perspective, that's also a pretty bad story you've got here.
I think one of the other problems is it's when the second agent, when I called up to complain again, that nobody had come back, the second agent looked in the record and said, but the first agent you spoke to did send a message to the local post office that they had to resolve this issue and come back and pick it up, right? So someone in the process chain is not sticking to the deal, right? So this person, the agent, thinks I've done my job. I've told the local post office they have to deal with it, and the local post office has basically said, why on earth would you say that? I'm not going back to pick it up, right? The mailman can drop by the next morning to ask if he still got it, which is actually what happened, right? The mailman actually stopped the next day and came and said, sorry, I missed you yesterday. You still got the parcel? No, I went to the post office and mailed it myself.
You're hitting on something we see over and over and over again is internal structure, and even worse when it's external structure, which this borders on. The contact center is a centralized function. They do their thing, they hand it over. And then another organization, the two groups, their priorities aren't in sync. They're not, working together as a single unit. I don't know, that the second agent was like, well, our people told them. That doesn't help.
Exactly.
No,
not at all.
Yeah, the fact that we've got an overall corporate breakdown, it ain't my fault. Okay,
That's
great. How does that?
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings about that. I mean, on one end, that's actually good that they try to be transparent, explain what went wrong, but there is a way to do it. And here, it's not me, it's him. It's not helping the customers in any way. That's trying to help myself feel better about something that went wrong, but it's not taking the customer perspective at all into consideration. So there is also something wrong here. Well, the more we talk about it, the more we uncover problems here. Is there a silver lining though? Because I feel like first they ask you talked about a survey. I don't remember what you said exactly about the survey, if you don't mind repeating. And you talked about a voucher. So there is a silver lining, I feel.
Sure, no, absolutely. So the after the first agent, they sent me a satisfaction survey, and of course I assumed that the issue had been resolved. So they asked me, how did the agent resolve the issue? I said yes, right? Of course, that wasn't the case. After the second interaction, they didn't send me a survey. Right. But I have to say, that they did send me a voucher, which was generous. I think they realized that it's messed up and that I was really unhappy. So they sent me a voucher for the equivalent of about €30. So I can't complain about that, right? I'm not sure that I do this. That I shouldn't make a business of this. I don't think I'm going to get rich by complaining. But let's say under the circumstances, it kind of alleviated the pain somewhat.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe this episode will get us down to 1 in 13 people letting the company know that they're unhappy instead of 6, because there's €50 in it.
Actually, the voucher is pretty amazing. I mean, the cost of living in Switzerland is higher than the average of Europe. So maybe €30 is a normal amount, but that sounds like a lot of money for a voucher for the post office.
No, it is normal. I think their normal rate is about 10. So I must have conveyed the fact that I was really unhappy really well. So
back to what I was saying.
I was doing justice to that grumpy old man hat. So
back to what I was saying earlier. While I understand the pain, I'm still kind of jealous. I don't even think the French post office knows the concept of vouchers, because I would make some money here. I think I could open a business with just that, because I get so many issues with my deliveries. If they had vouchers, I think that's a great. Did they get voucher because you requested to be compensated, or did they say, "Oh, this guy is angry and he deserved the voucher"? Was it like a natural process, or did you request for something?
No, I didn't have to request it. I just made the point, that I was unhappy, that I'd had to go out, I had to interrupt my day, it had messed up my schedule. I had to go out in a hurry because it was obvious at 4 p.m. that, the person wasn't coming. So I had to get to the post office before they closed. And I think at that point, the person who was listening to me realized, okay, this guy's really mad, so we're going to have to do something for him. So no, I didn't have to ask for it. That was... So at least that. And Julien, I get where you're coming from, right? These are, problems at a very high level. We're spoiled when it comes to, services and utilities in Switzerland. We're very spoiled in comparison with a lot of other countries. I mean, I remember when I was living in the UK for a while, I went to put my garbage bag in the garbage can outside my house, and there were a whole load of letters at the bottom of my garbage can. Some mailman had just got fed up delivering the mail, so dumped it all in my garbage can, and I ended up delivering it in the neighborhood, right? So, it's like, here, I found some of your mail in my garbage can. So yes, that wouldn't happen here. So we're very spoiled.
But actually,
but hey, expectations,
Exactly. It does not matter. The quality of service does not matter too much. It's really the comparison between the expectation and the delivery, because you have countries where the quality may be much lower than what you are used to, but the population is used to it. So it's okay. It's really the gap that's problematic. What kind of learnings can we get from that story? We've tried to analyze it out. There were tons of things that we could get out of the story. Maybe can we come up with 2 or 3 learnings for the Swiss post office or for any other companies doing deliveries or setting expectations that they could learn from that story?
Well, from my side, I think that the first most important one is don't promise something you can't guarantee, right? And I'm not necessarily talking about the actual service itself, but I'm talking about the first agent who promised that somebody was going to come and pick it up, but actually the final part of that journey wasn't in her hands.
Right.
So she couldn't guarantee it. The best she could do, she could have said, I can request someone to come and pick it up, but I can't guarantee it's going to happen.
Right. I don't know if it'll be today.
And then I would have known, okay, if somebody isn't here by such and such a time, they're not coming, I'm going to go myself, right? But she said, someone will come back. She made a promise, which at the end of the day, she couldn't guarantee, right?
Right. Clearly, that was not in her control. So that was the biggest problem.
I agree with that. But the follow-up on this would be, again, around responsibility. If you do make a promise, then you should proactively follow up. She or he, I don't remember, should have called the post office an hour later to ask, did you send someone? Did that happen? Yeah. And if not, should I call back the customer? Back to your callback suggestion, Max. I should call back the customer and say, sorry, I made a promise. It's just not going to happen. But I help you reschedule for tomorrow morning if you'd like. Because making promises that you can't keep is bad. But making promises and not following up is even worse, because there's way to avoid this kind of issues.
Yeah, and that, I think, is a structural problem. Because the central contact center, they're not, she's probably doing one of those every 10 minutes. She can't be tracing and following those up. And they probably don't even have a feedback loop from the local office to her, so she would even know whether they did that. So she was not in a structure where she should have been allowed to make that promise.
No. It's a little bit fire and forget. I'll make a promise, I'll hand it on down the line, and it's out of my hands. I've done the thing, and that's absolutely true. And in my previous employment at ABB, where I was responsible for complaint management, we changed our complaint management system. It used to be that the person on the front line would take the complaint from the customer, give it to the factory, and say, "Okay, you deal with it." And it was then up to the factory to find the solution and to discuss with the customer. And very often things went missing, they didn't get dealt with. And we changed that around and said, the guy who takes the complaint on the front line is responsible for making sure that the issue's dealt with. Not responsible for finding the solution, because that would be beyond their ability, but responsible for following up with the factory to make sure that the customer has a solution. And they would then be responsible for actually closing the ticket, not the factory. Precisely for this reason, right?
That's
so
that's the bottom line for this problem, right? I mean, that's exactly on it.
Expectations and responsibility. So the real question here, Michael, that we have for you is, do you feel any better? After telling the story, after analyzing it, do you feel any better sharing your troubles on the CX therapy couch?
Absolutely. I feel totally refreshed and relieved, and I think you've done a great job in getting this. It's been very cathartic, absolutely.
I have another question, but I'm not sure I want to know the answer. Did you feel better after the therapy, or did you feel better after the voucher? But don't tell us. I will just think
the voucher certainly took some of the sting out of it. Let's put it that way.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the couch this week, Michael. Very nice of you. Lovely to have Europeans on the same time zone to talk about CX every now and then. Thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we'll have you on the couch again soon.
Thank you both for inviting me. It was a real pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
So Max, good story?
Good story, painful story, but good nonetheless. If you're out there listening to this, please let us know what you think. I showed a physical letter, but email is probably more practical, or comment
Fax.
on fax. Fax would work, absolutely. I don't know what my fax number is, but go ahead and fax it. I'm sure you'll figure it out eventually. And we'd love to hear from you on your thoughts and any questions on this.
Well, Max, thank you for that. Next month, we'll have another expert on the couch. I might need to reschedule because I'm planning on moving to Switzerland in the next few days.
Okay,
Apparently,
fair enough. We'll work around that. And it'll be good because we'll be able to mail you things and you'll get them.
Exactly. For change. I mean, seriously. Expectations. I have billion stories about this topic. It doesn't just happen to me. That's therapeutic for me, not just for Michael. But thank you so much, Max. And we should catch up again next month now.
All right. I'll be waiting. Take care.
Bye.